Miss Petulia Perpetual Motion, Part 2. I actually really like this character. It was a long ride to the Porcelain Museum. Despite the driver's protestations, the headmistress insisted that Petulia travel in the boot, so she couldn't cause any damage on the way. Well, fancy being shut in the boot. As soon as they arrived, the headmistress stuffed Miss Petulia Perpetual Motion into the bouncing boom boom ball. Then she led her party of schoolgirls inside the museum as Petulia bounced along, bringing up the rear. Despite her initial reluctance, once inside the bouncing boom boom ball, the girl began to enjoy it. A smile spread across her face. The museum was a treasure trove of all things porcelain. Porcelain dogs, porcelain cats, porcelain plates, porcelain vases, porcelain teapots, porcelain candlestick holders, porcelain. Every single object was an antique, which means very old, and worth a fortune. I have got a sneaky suspicion that this is not going to go well. Now, girls, needless to say, there is absolutely no touching of any of the items on display, announced the headmistress. I know most of your mammas and papas are filthy rich, since they send you to Modesty Place, which I am proud to say is the most expensive school in the country. However, if you do touch anything and cause it to break, you will have to pay for it yourselves, every last penny. Does your beloved headmistress make herself clear? The pupils murmured, I said, does your beloved headmistress make herself clear? Yes, miss, replied the girls. Now gather round. The girls huddled round a plinth. I wonder what that is. On it sat a large bowl. I've got an idea now. With hundreds of tiny flowers hand-painted round the outside. Petulia bounced up and down in her giant ball to try and get a better look. Miss Prigg raised her half-moon spectacles to her eyes. This ball was made in Paris. It once belonged to the last Queen of France, Marie Antoinette, and dates back to the 18th century. Wow, that's a very important piece of history. Suddenly, in her eagerness to see, Miss Petulia Perpetual Motion bounced so hard that the bouncing boom boom ball hit the ceiling. From there it rebounded, gathering speed at an alarming rate. Now it was going wham! Up and down, up and down, up and down, shaking the room as it bounced, bounced, boom, boom, boom. The headmistress gasped in horror. Miss Petulia Perpetual Motion was bouncing dangerously close to the priceless porcelain pieces. Oh! As the bouncing boom boom ball bounced closer and closer, Miss Prig stretched out her long thin arms and gave it a shove. This caused the contraption to start ricocheting off the walls. As all the other schoolgirls watched with their mouths open, it walloped off the priceless porcelain without damaging it at all, and then bounced back into the headmistress, bash, sending her tumbling into a porcelain penguin posing on a plinth. "No!" she screamed. The penguin went flying through the air. It was an unusual sight, as penguins are, of course, flightless birds. But the wonder of seeing such a bird finally taking flight was soon brought to an abrupt halt. The porcelain penguin smashed against the wall, crash, shattering into hundreds of tiny pieces. All the schoolgirls gasped in horror and delight. "You'll pay for that, Perpetual Motion," shouted the headmistress. "But I didn't touch the priceless porcelain, headmistress." "You did," reasoned the girl. Needless to say, this made Miss Prig blaze with rage. She chased after Miss Petulia Perpetual Motion as the girl bounced off to the other side of the room. Boom, boom, boom! The headmistress raced towards a bouncing boom boom ball, this time with her arms and legs outstretched to stop it. But as it bounced off the wall, it sent the lady flying backwards through the air once more. The first thing she hit was a porcelain statue of a swan. Thwack! The second thing was a life-size porcelain statue of a ballerina. Smash! Bang! The third thing she hit was a porcelain statue of a clown. Wallop! It wasn't one of those happy clowns. It was one of those sad clowns. Sadly, there isn't time to fully explore the clown's emotional state. That's because said clown, along with those other objects flying through the air, was soon nothing more than a shower of porcelain scattering across the floor. Shatter! At this very moment, hearing all the commotion, the elderly museum director came dashing out of his office. He popped his monocle into place to survey the damage. Every single one of the museum's most priceless pieces of porcelain was in pieces. "What is the meaning of this?" he bellowed, waving one of his walking sticks aloft in fury. The headmistress wobbled to her feet, crunching porcelain gravel underfoot as she did so. Crunch, crunch, crunch. I can explain, pleaded the lady. Who touched the precious, priceless, pleasing porcelain pieces? Demanded the museum director. Well, the headmistress glanced over at Miss Petulia Perpetual Motion, who, to her surprise, was now bouncing only very gently in her plastic ball. Well, technically it was me, but... No buts, shouted the museum director. Lady, you will pay for every last piece. No! Screamed the headmistress. The girl, who couldn't keep still, smirked. The museum's bill came to many millions. On a headmistress's salary, even at the most expensive school in the country, it would have taken 1,000 years for Miss Prigg to pay everything back. She had to take on a lot of other jobs at Modesty Place. Despite being a very grand woman, the headmistress now had to be up at dawn every morning with a mop and bucket, cleaning the school corridors. At lunchtime, she would be dishing out soup in the dining hall. And after school, most days, Miss Prigg would be seen up a ladder cleaning wet leaves and dead pigeons from the guttering. And if there was one person guaranteed to kick over the headmistress's bucket, send the soup flying through the air, or trip over her ladder, it was, of course, Miss Petulia Perpetual Motion. Some years later, it was Petulia's very last day at Modesty Place. She was 18 years old now and ready to somersault off into the world. That morning the headmistress had been up at dawn, unblocking the toilets, and she had been called to the library to clear up some vomit after the librarian had come down with food poisoning. As Miss Prigg angrily plonked down her mop and bucket, she spotted her nemesis, Petulia, sitting in the corner of the library reading a book. The strange thing was that the girl was sitting perfectly motionless. Miss Prigg hid behind some shelves of books and spied on her most hated pupil. Apart from turning a page every couple of minutes, Miss Petulia Perpetual Motion did not move a muscle. After an hour of snooping, the headmistress leapt out from behind the shelves. "Ah-ha!" exclaimed the lady. "Gotcha!" "Shush!" shushed Petulia, her eyes indicating a sign on the wall of the library that said, "Silence!" But, the headmistress couldn't contain herself. "You can sit still if you want to." "Yes, I can," replied the girl, "and I have always been able to." "But what about that letter from your mother?" "Oh, that silly old thing. I wrote that myself." 100 years of detention!" bellowed Miss Prigg. I'd love to. I really would. But today is my very last day at Modesty Place. And for old time's sake, I'm going to... What is she going to do? What do you think she's going to do? Cartwheel out. Farewell, headmistress. With that, Miss Petulia, perpetual motion, leapt on her hands and spun out of the library, sending every single book flying through the air. Thud, thud, thud. The headmistress was in the library until midnight, picking up all the books and putting them back on the shelves. Then she still had to mop up the vomit. So now you know, Miss Petulia Perpetual Motion really was one of the world's worst children. Wonderfully so. And I agree. These children get worser and worser.